Follow us on Twitter at ghettoplex_mp4, on Instagram at ghettoplex.mp4, and on YouTube at ghettoplex. The Killer's Game. This movie, I will say, if you've seen the trailers, you definitely get the vibe of they're trying to emulate some kind of John Wick world, assassins and whatnot. When I actually watched the film, though, it definitely does have, it's undeniable that they are trying to copy a little bit of the homework from John Wick, but they've also done a little bit of I don't want to call it ripping off, but they've definitely taken some inspiration from Smokin Aces. So that's how kind of I would describe this film. Aside from the story, obviously, you've seen the trailers. Dave Bautista's character, whose name is Joe, is diagnosed with disease, some kind of brain cancer. It's not cancer, but some kind of brain disease. And so he orders a hit on himself. None of this is spoilers, by the way. This is all in the trailers. And he has this love interest, Sofia Boutella. But as he's getting comfortable with his love interest, he gets diagnosed. So he puts a hit on himself. However, he gets contacted by the doctors, and the diagnosis was a mistake. This is all in the trailers. No spoilers. I'll let you know when we get to spoilers. But anyways, so he puts this hit out on himself, and this is where it gets a lot of the Smokin Aces inspiration here, because it's several parties of hitmen, assassins, whatever you want to call them, and they are all after one single hit, much like in Smokin Aces, where there's a hit put on Israel, and you got all these different hitmen hunting Buddy Israel. So yeah, that's the way I would describe this film. It is an amalgamation of John Wick and Smokin Aces. It's not a good film, but it's also not the worst film. For something that's taking inspiration from many sources. We even get a Breakfast Club reference in the film. I mean, if you've watched the trailer, you kind of know the story. There's not really anything brand new in this film, nothing that's innovative or whatnot. It just seems like someone who was a really big fan of those assassins movies wanted to make an assassin movie. So yeah, I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's just is what it is. And that's probably the best way I can describe this movie. It is what it is. I'll just say this. You've probably seen this movie. You've just never seen this movie with Bautista as the John Wick knockoff. He is John Wick slash Buddy Ace's Israel in one character. So he's like a badass, and he's also the guy who's got the head put out on him. That's what this movie is. It's a combination of John Wick and Smokin Aces. However, John Wick and Smokin Aces are far better. They're far better films. But The Killer's Game is not the worst thing ever. I would definitely put it on again as one of those films I kind of just fall asleep to. Another thing about this movie is the music. God, the music is so bad. The music is cringe. It's a big cringe. There's a few good songs in there, but it's also too just the use of songs is, sometimes I feel like they're just putting in music because they're like, okay, I hope this makes the film more exciting. Let's put some music behind it. But it doesn't make it exciting or better. It does. The song selection here is not great. Like I said, other than there's a few songs in there that are kind of cool, but other than that, I don't know. It's not really that good. One thing I do like, well, it's half and half. The motion graphics in this film, whether it's introducing characters, just the motion graphics and the graphic design, because implement both graphic design and motion graphics in this film. And some parts are well done and some parts not so much. But the parts that are well done really work. I was a big fan of that as a multimedia designer here myself. I really did appreciate the graphic design and the motion graphics when they were well executed. All right, so let's get to the spoilers. So Bautista and Sofia Boutella are introduced right at the beginning. Their mute cute happens within the first, I would say, 5-10 minutes of the film. It's probably 5. And basically, Bautista carries out this Abe Lincoln type assassination in a theater where Sofia Boutella's character, whose name is Macy, or Maze, or I don't know, it's spelled weird, but it's pronounced like Macy. Anyway, she's performing at a theater where he happens to be carrying out a hit on this guy right in the I would just call it an Abraham Lincoln. That's what I'm going to call these. Any assassination that takes place in a theater, I'm going to call it the Lincoln. Bautista is performing a Lincoln hit, and it is here where our two main characters here meet. Sofia Boutella, by the way, but let me say, I have had just the biggest crush on her forever. And in this film, especially towards the end, she kind of looks like my ex-girlfriend, especially with the hit. So it was one of those things where it was kind of weird because I was like, oh my God, I like this girl. And then towards the end, I was like, oh my God, she looks like my ex. Why? So that sucked. Anyway, so they meet, right? and Bautista saves her. You know, it's the meet cute. He saves the day. Well, he saves her, not really the day, but he saves her after a little bit of a mess he made, and that's their meet cute. It's funny because I guess when they're trying to, make them hit it off or whatever, they're trying to convince you of the relationship. She invites him out to dinner, and so she gives him his number, and he has this moment where he's struggling to figure out what's his first text message going to be to her, and it was actually kind of funny. That moment actually made me laugh. So I would say, give him a point for the when you got to send the first text, I guess. That was a very relatable moment. Then we get this montage of Bautista, his character's basically him. He's in this relationship with Sofia Boutella's character. Let me just call them by their names now. Well, so we get this montage of Joe's work and his relationship with Macy, which is the progression of this little montage is actually pretty clean. It doesn't really convince me more of their relationship. Anyways, yeah, so they're not, the most unconvincing couple ever, but they're also not convincing. Even though they did a really good job of this montage to help time pass by so we could watch and get the idea of, oh, okay, this guy, this is what he does for work, and also he's falling in love with this girl. The montage was great, but the relationship itself is not the most memorable, I guess. It's not the most convincing. Like I said, it's not the worst, but anyways, so Joe's having this series of headaches, and eventually he goes to see a doctor, gets a diagnosis, and he's basically, the diagnosis is bad because, he's going to die. So, because of this terrible news he just gets, for some reason he gets rid of all of his artillery, and he goes to his boss, who kind of plays like the character of the was John Wick's the hotel manager. Anyways, this guy kind of, it seems like he was modeled off of the John Wick hotel manager, where he has, John Wick and the hotel manager, they have this, very convincing friendship. They're trying to model that same thing here, where they have Bautista and I forget this actor's name. He's like a British dude. Seen him in a bunch of movies before, but I can never remember his name. Anyways, they have this same relationship. It's like the hitman and this guy who is his boss. So he goes to his boss and he tells him he wants to put a hit out on himself, but his boss won't do it because they're such good friends. And he's like, I can't do it, man. You're the homie, basically. But he does promise to kind of look after Macy. So because his boss won't put a hit out on him to quote unquote retire him, he goes to a colleague who also happens to be a bit of an enemy of his, this assassin named Antoinette. So she already has her beef with him, as you have seen from the trailers. He killed her father or something like that. So he's giving her the opportunity to kill him because, it's like sweet revenge for her. Obviously, she accepts. And this is where the movie gets a little bit too stupid. I don't know. I don't have any other word for it. She uses this app. It's kind of like a combination of Tinder and Uber, but for assassins. So you basically, it's like if you need a ride, you call for a ride. So that's how it operates for the people who need an assassin. If you need an assassin, you hire an assassin local to your area, or you look for one wherever around the world if someone's available. And then the assassins on the app then kind of use it like Tinder, whether they want to swipe right and take the job or swipe left and they say, no thanks. And this is where it gets very Smokin Aces like, because we get this a lot of these character intros about all the assassins, kind of like in Smokin Aces, where you see a little bit of the backstory of the assassins that are going to be involved in the film. But here it feels like we're kind of far enough into the film that setup doesn't really, it definitely helps. So you see the killers that Joe is going to be fighting, but at the same time, it feels a little unnecessary. Not unnecessary, but unnecessarily long. It's better than an exposition dump, I guess, rather than just saying, this Korean kill squad are so good at killing as a team. So it does help, but at the same time, it doesn't really, I don't know how to just explain this really. It's good to have this, you get an idea of these killers, but at the same time, I didn't really care. Anyways, as she's just hiring all these assassins, Joe has to go and break up with Macy because he's like, I'm dying, so we can't be together. And he does this very Patrick Bateman like American Psycho breakup where he's just very emotionless and she's all super emotional. And it's so corny, but it made me think of American Psycho and how much better it was in that film. So I guess, I don't know. Do with that information what you will. And it's funny because I don't know why, but Joe, he lives, this movie takes place in Europe. So he lives in this European apartment. And for some reason, his front door is like a bank vault. And it's like, you don't see that until this moment where he's, going to prepare to die. And you see that his door is a fucking bank vault door. Anyways, it's here where he calls Macy and he's telling her, oh, I'm going to die. And then right after that call, he gets a call from the doctor, and he's like, "Oh my God, I made a mistake. You're not actually gonna die. Some other bloke, that's his diagnosis. He's gonna die." So we get our first encounter with the assassins, which is this gang of Koreans, and that fight was it was pretty funny. I would say it was probably one of the funniest fights of the films. That first hit with the Koreans. But after that, he fights some bikers. He goes to the first round of assassins. So they don't work out. So now Antoinette has to make a second Uber call to these assassins. And we get more, intros and whatnot. And so the game, it keeps going. As John is recovering from his first round of assassins, he goes and sees his boss and tells him about the whole situation, how he's not actually dying. And his boss's wife does this chiropractic neck crank that actually relieves the tension from these headaches that Joe's been having that he thought was the whatever cancer. And so now he's like a brand new man. All of a sudden, chiropractor wife neck crank cures Joe, and we're good to go for round two. And it is here where we then end up in this castle house location. I don't know what the hell it is. And then we get, sorry, it's here we get our second round of assassins, round two fight. And of course, it's a lot of action, blah, blah, blah. And we get, I will say, in the castle, probably the best fight sequence was with the Spaniard. I'm assuming he's a Spaniard. He's a Spaniard or Mexican, Spanish speaking. And we get this jujitsu Spaniard. Before that, though, we do get this callback to the Breakfast Club where he hangs one of his enemies on a bullhorn or something like that. And he says, "You mess with the bull, you get the horn." And I was like, oh, okay, Breakfast Club. So there's a lot of callbacks in this movie to other films. Anyways, the best fight in this film is with the Jiu-Jitsu Spaniard. I mean, it's a lot of Jiu-Jitsu. It's more MMA, but it's heavy on the Jiu-Jitsu side. I think that fight choreography there was probably the most well done combat scene in the film. Anyways, as we get through our second round of assassins, Joe and Macy escape from the castle. They make it to a Catholic church where Joe finds out that she's pregnant and they want to, live happily ever after. And because they're in the church, they happen to come across a priest. And the priest scene actually does get a good gag because he asks the priest, can you marry us? And the priest is like, you got to go to confession first. You can't just come to the Catholic church and get married just, for fun. So he goes to confession and then he confesses a lot of his work. And, that scene, it gets a good laugh. Anyways, get married and they take out the last round of assassins, round three fight, and the movie ends. So I would say the pacing of the film is very fast. I don't have a problem with the pacing, although it does feel a bit rushed, but I would rather it feel rushed than feel super dragging on and feel like I've been there forever. So yeah, that is The Killer's Game. It is, as I said in the beginning, a amalgamated knockoff of John Wick and Smoking Aces. If you saw it, yeah, what did you think? If you watched this just to avoid watching the movie and just get the spoilers straight through, let me know if this sounds like a movie that would interest you, because it definitely is a movie I plan on probably not watching or recommending. Only because I think, too, my fat crush on Sofia Boutella, and for Bautista to go ahead and knock her up in this film, I can't forgive him for this. So for that, I'm going to have to not recommend this movie due to the humiliation I feel that I have just endured of Dave Bautista stealing my woman from me. Anyways, yeah, let me know what you think. Follow us on Twitter at Ghettoplex_MP4, on Instagram at Ghettoplex.mp4, and on YouTube at Ghettoplex. See you guys on the next one.